Welcome back to the Great Prince Edward Island Adventure Tour of the Lights. Last time we visited 9 lighthouses from Charlottetown to Lower Montague. In this, the third episode, we're going to go this time from Summerside east and find 15 more scattered along the south coast. We got a lot of territory to cover today, so we'll get right to it. This is the Summerside Rear Range Lighthouse, and it was built at a cost of $225 by Milton Walsh and was put into operation on September the 5th, 1895. The Summerside Rear Range Lighthouse remains in use today and now features a red vertical stripe on its seaward face. The tower is 20.1 meters tall and displays a fixed green light. This light is of personal interest to me because it's located on Glover Shore, where my family lived before I was born. My mother tells a story of how she liked to open the windows at night and listen to the waves lapping at the rocks. Not far from Glover Shore is the Summerside Outer Range Rear Lighthouse. The Summerside Outer Range lights, which began operation in 1991, are the most recent of enclosed lights to be established in Prince Edward Island. When properly aligned, the red range lights guide vessels into the mouth of Summerside Harbor near the Indian Head Lighthouse, from where they can use the Summerside Range light to proceed up the harbor. Not far away is the Summerside Outer Range Front Lighthouse on Mackenzie Drive. The two lighthouses are similar in appearance, both being square, pyramidal towers topped by enclosed square lantern rooms that are surrounded by a simple metal gallery. A white trapezoidal day mark with a red vertical stripe is mounted on the seaward face of both the towers. The front tower is 9 meters tall and the rear is 10.1 meters tall. As the front tower is located near the shore at the western end of the harbor, its focal plane of 9.3 meters is roughly the same height as the tower. The focal plane of the rear range light is 14.8 meters. And as luck would have it, this is where we're headed next. We were looking for an adventure. Well, we're about to have one. In 1878, Parliament appropriated $4,000 to build a new lighthouse at the pier of Indian Point, Summerside Harbor. A contract for the amount of $6,880 was awarded to the following year to Richard Keefe of Alberton, and construction started on the project. Work continued through 1880, and the Indian Point Lighthouse, now commonly known as Indian Head Lighthouse, was completed and put into operation of navigation in 1881. Here's another spot I've never been to. Traveled all over PEI and I've never been to Indian Head Lighthouse. If it's dry, you should be able to take any vehicle out here. The early keepers of Indian Head Lighthouse received an annual salary of $300. The early keepers' main method of transportation from the lighthouse to the mainland was by a rowboat. And during the spring thaw in 1897, a strong southwest wind drove large sections of ice over the breakwater, carrying away the station's boathouse and smashing the keeper's rowboat. A new rowboat was hastily supplied to him at a cost of $30. Indian Head Lighthouse is now recognized as a heritage place under the Prince Edward Island Heritage Places Protection Act on the 3rd of October 2012. On September the 25th, 2013, the lighthouse was awarded a provincially designated Heritage Places plaque and certificate, and the City of Summerside has submitted a petition for ownership of the lighthouse under the Parks Canada Heritage Lighthouse Program. The first keeper of Indian Head Lighthouse was Charles Peters in 1881, and the last keeper was Amos L. Perry, and he retired in 1961. The ride into Indian Head is something that I think everybody should do at some point. The ride coming down this dirt road, it's beautiful. The trees are all canopied, and it's well worth your time to come out here if you've never been here before. If it's been wet for a period of time, you may want to think twice about going out here on machines without tires or low ground clearance. But if it's dry, any machine can make it out here. Cruisers, cars, you name it. Summerside at one time was known as Green's Shore. Daniel Green's son Joseph was running an inn in the area when Colonel Henry Compton traveled to Green's Shore around 1840 on a bitterly cold day. Just as he was approaching Green's Shore, the sun emerged, leading Colonel Compton to proclaim, "It's like the summer side of the island here." John Green linked the sound of the phrase and soon placed a sign over his door welcoming guests to the Summerside Inn. Green Shore later changed its name to Summerside, and the town was incorporated into that name on 1877. Just a little bit south of Indian Head Lighthouse is the Summerside Range Front Lighthouse. This lighthouse was originally on the wharf out in front of Summerside. It was built in 1861, and Robert Ellis was paid 11 British pounds to build it. This range front lighthouse remained in use until 1961, when it was replaced by a skeleton tower, and the services of Robert Ferguson's, its last keeper, was discontinued. The tower was subsequently relocated to McCollum's Point by the Clark family, where it has been a focal point of a park. This plan, however, didn't work out, and the tower was relocated a short distance away. This lighthouse remains on private property. You can drive by and have a look at it. If people are out and you ask nicely, they might let you have a look and take some pictures. I'm not sure. I didn't. I just drove by there, but they were friendly and waved on the way by. About 17 kilometers to our south is our next point of interest, and that is Sea Cow Head Lighthouse. This was something interesting that I didn't know. It comes as a bit of a surprise to most people that walruses, for which Sea Cow Head and Sea Cow Pond are named, were abundant here in Prince Edward Island during the late 19th century. Sea Cow Head Lighthouse was built during the summer of 1864 under the contract of 314 British pounds by David McFarlane and John Ranking. Beside the cost of constructing the tower, 86 British pounds was paid for the land and the right-of-way. Malcolm McFarlane was given 30 British pounds for clearing the land. Thomas Robinson was paid 85 British pounds for the lantern, and 300 British pounds was expended for copper, lamps, glass, and materials for the frame. Sea Cow Head was recognized as a heritage place under the Prince Edward Island Heritage Places Protection Act on November the 3rd, 2012. On September the 25th, 2013, the light was awarded a provincially designated heritage places plaque and a certificate. On September the 7th, 2022, the Friends of Sea Cow Head Lighthouse Inc. obtained the ownership of the lighthouse from the Department of Fisheries and Oceans. The official opening of Sea Cow Head Lighthouse to the public is scheduled for July the 10th, 2024. The first keeper of Sea Cow Head Lighthouse was Malcolm McFarland, and he served from 1865 till 1867, and the last keeper of the light was Charles Walker Richards from 1946 to 1959. Now, this is an old lighthouse that's been around for a lot of years, and it has a lot of history to it, and there's just too much here for me to go over in this little short video, so I'll provide a link for you in the comments section so you can do some exploring on your own. About 51 minutes away, or about 60 kilometers to our northeast, is our next destination, and it's the Port Borden Front Range Lighthouse. Before the arrival of powerful ferries, ice boats were used to transport mail and passengers to and from Prince Edward Island during the winter. Two ports for this purposes were used on the island, one at Wood Islands, which linked Pictou, Nova Scotia, and the other to Cape Traverse, which connected to Cape Tormentine, New Brunswick. The route between Cape Traverse and Cape Tormentine was the shortest distance between the island and the mainland of just over 8.5 miles. Iceboat service at Cape Traverse began in 1827 and continued until 1917, when the ice-breaking railcar ferry Prince Edward Island began service between Cape Tormentine and a new port constructed a few miles west of Cape Traverse at Carlton Point. and in 1919 this lighthouse was built to begin the ferry service. Also built in 1919 were the Borden Range Lights. They were established to guide the ferry into the port of Borden. The present Port Borden Pier Lighthouse is a hexagonal tower with a height of 8.5 meters and was placed at the outer end of the ferry pier in 1976. The opening of the Confederation Bridge in 1997 ended 80 years of ferry service at Port Borden. Though the range lights were decommissioned, the Port Borden Pier Lighthouse remains active, exhibiting a isophase green light with a period of 4 seconds. The Port Borden Front Range Tower also became a casualty of the Confederation Bridge, and it remains abandoned and neglected in its last official site. As part of the planning for a new port, the government purchased sites in 1917 at a cost of $225 for range lights to help guide marine traffic into the harbor. The Port Borden range lights were officially established the following year and were originally equipped with 20-inch reflectors and duplex burners. William Carruthers served as the first keeper of the range lights. The Port Borden Rear Range Lighthouse is a square wooden pyramidal structure that stands 12.8 meters tall from the base to the vane, while the shorter Port Borden Front Range Lighthouse is just 6.2 meters tall. A gallery supported by iron brackets surrounds the square lantern room for the rear tower. On June the 1st, 1997, the Confederation Bridge, known as the Span of Green Gables by some, was opened and the ferry service to Port Borden was discontinued. The Port Borden range lights were also taken out of service that year. The rear tower, this one, has been relocated to an attractive marine park in Borden Carlton, near the foot of the Confederation Bridge. "24 minutes to our east-east-south is the small community of Victoria, where we're headed there next. In particular, we're headed to the south side of a place called Paul's Bluff, where you will find the Wrights Range Front Lighthouse. The Wrights Range lights were first activated on June the 15th, 1894. Charles L. Wright was appointed the keeper of his namesake lights on June the 14th, 1894. He was paid $20 for the land in which the rear lights stood and received an annual salary of $100. He served until 1935 and was succeeded by his son, Charles Evan Wright, who was keeper of the light until 1959. The Coast Guard deactivated the Wrights Range lights in 2011, and this one stands on private property. About a kilometer away inland to your west is the Wrights Range rear light. The Wrights Range lights were used to enter the Crapaud Harbor from the Strait of Northumberland. Once the lights of the Wrights Range were in alignment, mariners could follow this range northwest by 1/4 north until the red light of Palmer's Wharf was in alignment. Keeping these two lights aligned would lead you into the black buoy at the entrance of the dredged cut to the wharf's north-northeast. When strangers were entering the harbor by night, they were advised to anchor by the black buoy, as it was considered unsafe to attempt to make the dredged cut at night. The Wright's Range rear lighthouse, as seen here, stands 27 feet tall. It resides on private property since it was decommissioned in 2011. Two kilometers away is the Leard's Range rear lighthouse, located in Victoria. Leard's Range lights were established in 1879, and James Barclay was paid $535 under contract to build the tower. S.J.B. Leard was the first keeper of the rear light, and he served from 1878 to 1901, and the last keeper was Emerson Malcolm MacDonald, and he served from 1951 to 1960. One kilometer south of the Leard's rear range is the Leard's Range front lighthouse, also commonly known as Palmer's Lighthouse. Percy Palmer became the keeper of the single light in Victoria in 1875 and watched over the front range light from the time it was established until 1889. Since 1990, the Palmer's Lighthouse has been operated as the Victoria Seaport Museum during the summer. Visitors are allowed to climb the ladder to the lantern, where they can get a good view of Victoria Harbour and the unique features of the tower, which would be its two lights. The museum has information on the harbour's 3 sets of range lights and the keepers who were responsible for them. Other displays are the history of the village and several of its historical buildings. Leard's Range was discontinued by the Coast Guard in 2011, but the front range remains active as a Victoria Harbour lighthouse. Leard's front range light was recognized as a heritage place under the Prince Edward Island Heritage Places Protection Act on October the 3rd, 2012. On September the 25th, 2013, the lighthouse was awarded a provincially designated Heritage Places plaque and a certificate. "35 kilometers to our east, heading towards Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island, we're heading to a place in Rocky Point known as the Blockhouse Point Lighthouse. Blockhouse Point Lighthouse is located on the west side of the entrance of the Charlottetown Harbour, overlooking the Northumberland Strait on the south shore of Prince Edward Island. The area around Blockhouse Point Lighthouse took considerable damage from Fiona, as you'll see here as this video continues. The current structure was built in 1876 by James W. Butcher on a contract of $2,750. The lighthouse was built of wood and consists of a square tower 12.8 meters tall. Blockhouse is a considerable structure. The dwelling consists of a kitchen, a parlor, 2 bedrooms on the ground floor, and 4 more bedrooms and a bathroom on the upper floor. The inside tower is lined with tongue-and-groove wallboards. The beacon was originally a catastrophic light, but in 1909 a more efficient 4-order Fresnel lens was installed with mercury vapor light source. Blockhouse Lighthouse Preservation Society, formed in 2011, submitted a petition for ownership of the lighthouse under Parks Canada Heritage Lighthouse Program, but then in 2015 it learned that the Mi'kmaq Confederacy had filed a claim for the lighthouse along with others and the surrounding crown lands across Prince Edward Island. By 2017, it had become into disrepair and began to fall apart. Said Carol Caraher, a nearby resident and member of the society, "This is our history. When it's gone, you can't have it back. It's gone, and it's a shame that people are fighting over it and letting it fall apart." Finally, in 2018, after backlash from the public, the Canadian Coast Guard landed on site and refurbished the old lighthouse, brought it back to its gleaming old state. New decks were installed and the foundation was repaired. Carol Caraher was so pleased with the work, noting, "It's such a great feeling to see a building that's so important to our community to be looked after with that type of care, which is really all we wanted in the first place." Blockhouse's first keeper was Thomas Owen from 1846 to 1852, and the last keeper of the blockhouse was William Stanley Taylor from 1936 to 1963. Just slightly northwest of our position at the blockhouse, on the walking trails of the Fort Amherst National Historic Site, are the Warren Cove range lights. Built in 1907, the Warren Range lights were the last set of lights that a mariner would see as he navigated his ship into the Charlottetown harbor. These range lights are kept in line astern to reach the wharves in Charlottetown. The lights are aligned when you are steering at 179 degrees. The first keeper of the Warren Range lights was Alexander S. McNeil, who added this responsibility to his job as keeper of the Blockhouse Lighthouse, which he had held since 1901. Today, these lights are preserved in the Amherst National Historic Site and serve as a light beacon into the Charlottetown harbor. I really enjoyed these last two lights. It's been years since I've been in Fort Amherst, and I forgot about these three lighthouses. As I walked these trails, I remember we had family picnics at Fort Amherst. These three lights are definitely worth your time to go and have a visit. The journey continues next time as we explore the central north coast of Prince Edward Island's lighthouses, an adventure where we've never adventured before. Take care.